The night my car died on Old Pine Road, everything went black. No engine, no lights, no signal, just wet trees and my breathing. A truck rolled up behind me, headlights burning in my mirror. I knew the man, he'd watched me for weeks at the diner. In that moment, I thought he was my only help. I didn't know yet he'd been waiting for this. If you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said I was careful. Not paranoid, not reckless, just normal careful. I worked late shifts at a small family diner, refilled coffee, wiped counters, and drove home alone most nights. To save time, I always took Old Pine Road. 2 narrow lanes through endless trees, no streetlights, hardly any houses. In the daytime it looked almost pretty, like a green tunnel. After midnight, it felt like driving through the inside of a throat. My name is Emily. I was 26 that year. I locked my doors, shared my location with my sister, and texted my coworker Mia every night before I pulled out of the lot. Leaving now. Old Pine in 5, I'd send, like clockwork. She'd reply with a skull emoji or don't die lol. We joked about it. Everyone in town did. The road had a reputation for accidents, drunk drivers, deer, black ice in winter. But never for what almost happened to me. I thought my routine made me safe. Same shift, same route, same texts. I didn't understand that patterns can protect you, but they can also make you easy to map. The first time I saw him, I barely registered his face. Just another late-night customer, slipping in an hour before closing and choosing the corner booth by the window. He ordered coffee and a slice of pie. Plain voice, plain clothes, plain everything. A dark jacket, a cap pulled low, clean hands. If you'd asked me to describe him afterwards, I'd probably have just said, I don't know. Regular. What I did notice was where he looked. Not at his phone, not at the TV above the counter, not even at me most of the time. He watched the parking lot. Every time headlights swung past the window, his gaze snapped toward them. When I walked out to take the trash, I felt his eyes follow me all the way to the dumpster and back. I told myself I was imagining it. Women learn to do that very young, to smother that feeling when a stranger's attention lingers too long. To smile, to be polite, to shrug it off. He left a big tip. Too big for just coffee and pie. I joked about it with Mia in the back room. Maybe he's into you, she laughed, nudging me with her elbow. But then he came back. Same booth. Same time. Same order. And again, his attention drifted more to the windows than to anything else. At first it was just a strange vibe. Later, I'd see it for what it really was. He wasn't there to eat. He was there to study. Over the next few weeks, he became a fixture. If I worked the late shift, he was usually there. Always the corner booth. Always alone. He didn't flirt. He didn't ask personal questions, at least not the obvious ones. But he collected information in smaller, quieter ways. "What time do you close?" he asked once, even though he'd clearly watched us flip the sign before. "You always work this shift?" he asked another time, like it was a casual, throwaway question. At the time, I answered without thinking, most nights, yeah. Someone's gotta keep this place running. I laughed like it was nothing. He smiled, and it wasn't a big, charming smile. It was thin and quick, like he'd just checked a box on a list. Sometimes, when I walked out at the end of my shift, I'd feel that crawling sensation between my shoulder blades. I'd look back through the glass and catch him watching me, eyes tracking my path from the door, across the lot, to my car. We had security cameras, of course. Cheap ones, sometimes glitchy. Still, they made me feel better. But cameras don't stop anyone. Sometimes they just give you something to review afterwards and ask yourself if you missed the warning signs. At the time, I told myself he was just lonely. Someone who liked human noise around him but didn't know how to join in. I didn't know he was memorizing things, what I drove, which exit I took, what time my shift usually ended, how often I walked out alone. The night everything happened started off like any other slow, rainy shift. Gray clouds pressed low over town, and a steady drizzle turned into real rain by late evening. We weren't busy. A couple of truckers, two teenagers sharing fries, an older woman with a book and a bottomless cup of tea. Right on schedule, he walked in. Same dark jacket, same cap, same calm expression. He nodded at me, went straight to his booth, and sat with his back to the wall, facing the whole room and the window. "Coffee and pie?" I asked. He smiled that thin little smile again. "You know me already," he said. Lightning flashed somewhere far beyond the trees, followed by a low, rolling rumble. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Mia texted me from the back, "Storm's getting ugly. Don't die on Old Pine, okay?" I snapped a picture of my half-empty coffee cup and replied, "If I die it'll be from caffeine overdose." While I was at the register, I glanced at the window. His reflection was clear in the glass, eyes not on his plate but on the row of cars outside. On mine. "He's back," I told Mia quietly when we crossed paths by the soda machine. "Big tip guy," she whispered back. "Yeah. Corner booth." She shrugged. "If he creeps you out, I'll walk you to your car after." At that point, I honestly wasn't sure if I was creeped out or just letting my imagination run wild. So I told her, "It's fine. He's just weird." I wish I'd taken her up on that offer. We closed a little after midnight. The rain had gotten heavier, drumming steadily on the roof of the diner. I cashed out, wiped down the last table, and glanced toward his booth. He was gone. His cup sat half-finished, the plate scraped almost clean, tip folded neatly under the edge. I hadn't seen him leave. No goodbye, no sound of the door, nothing. One second he was there, the next he wasn't. Mia locked the front door and stretched. "You good?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Tired, that's all." Outside, the lot glistened with standing water, yellow light from the lampposts swimming in slick puddles. Most of the cars were gone. Mine sat under the furthest lamp, exactly where I always parked it. I walked out with my keys between my fingers. Not like a weapon, more like a habit I'd picked up from articles shared online. The rain soaked through my jacket in seconds. The cold bit at my cheeks. I didn't check under my car. I didn't walk around it. I just unlocked it, tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, and sent the usual text to Mia, "Leaving now. Old Pine in 5. From across the lot, I had the strange, fleeting feeling of being watched. But when I turned, the window showed only my own reflection, the neon signs, and rows of empty booths. I got in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the road like I had 100 times before. Old Pine Road always felt lonelier in the rain. The tree line leaned closer, branches sagging under the weight of water. The world outside my headlights was just black and endless. About 10 minutes into the drive, the first flicker hit. The dashboard lights dimmed for a heartbeat, like someone briefly pinched a power cord out of the wall. The radio cut for a second, then crackled back with static. I frowned, glancing at the gauges. Fuel was fine. Engine temperature normal. No warning lights. "Don't do this to me now," I muttered, giving the steering wheel a little pat. The car had its moods, but it had never failed me outright. A faint smell drifted in, metallic, almost electric, like overheated wires or plastic. I cracked the window, expecting fresh wet air, but the smell stayed, thin but present. The lights flickered again. This time the headlights dimmed noticeably, then flared back to full strength. I checked my phone, no service. Of course. The dead stretch of old pine. Okay, I told myself. You're fine. Just get through this section. Then, without any warning at all, everything died. Engine. Radio. Dashboard. Headlights. The car rolled forward in silence, coasting on momentum until the road gently stole even that away. I drifted to a stop in total darkness, the rain suddenly louder than anything. For a moment I just sat there, hands frozen on the wheel, heart pounding in my ears. Cars break down, I told myself. It happens. But something about the way it had all gone out, not sputtering, not struggling, felt too clean. Too deliberate. Human instinct kicks in before logic. I didn't immediately think someone did this. I thought, I can fix this. I tried the key again. Nothing. No click, no grind, no weak attempt. Just dead silence. I turned on my phone's flashlight and popped the hood. The rain hit me like a curtain when I stepped out, cold water sliding down my neck. The beam of light shook slightly in my hand as I lifted the hood and propped it open. I'm not a mechanic, but even to me, something looked wrong. One of the battery cables sat just slightly skewed, like it had been loosened on purpose, not rattled loose over time. There was a smear of dark grease across the latch, fresh enough that the rain hadn't completely washed it away. I hadn't opened the hood in weeks. A tiny piece of cut black plastic lay tucked against the edge near the headlight, a bit of cable tie, cleanly snipped. I picked it up between two fingers, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The smell I'd noticed in the car was stronger here, faint, sharp, wrong. For the first time, the thought formed clearly, what if this isn't a breakdown? What if somebody wanted my car to die here? The forest pressed in on both sides of the road, no house lights, no passing traffic, no cell service. If you wanted a stage where no one could easily interrupt you, this would be perfect. I dropped the hood but didn't slam it shut, not ready to give up the illusion that I was just a stranded driver with a simple problem. Back in the car, I locked the doors, double-checked them, then sat in the darkness, trying to slow my breathing. The rain beat a steady rhythm on the roof. The windshield glistened with water, reflecting the faint glow of my phone screen. No bars. No emergency call. Just the taunting word "no service" in the corner. I tried the key again just for the sound of it. Nothing. I considered walking. There was a small service road, maybe a 10-minute hike ahead, leading to an old maintenance shed. If I could make it there, maybe I'd get a little signal. But that would mean leaving the relative shelter of the car and stepping into the dark with no idea who or what might be watching. As if summoned by the thought, light flared in my rearview mirror. Headlights. Far behind at first, little twin stars in the rain. They grew brighter, rounding the bend, slowing as they approached the shape of my car. Relief and terror crashed into each other inside me. Help! Or something else. The vehicle rolled to a stop a few meters behind me. The glare of its lights flooded my mirrors, blinding me to anything but white. I watched, barely breathing, as a door opened. A silhouette stepped out, solid, steady, unhurried. He walked toward my window, and as he moved out of the direct beam, his face came into view. It was him. The man from the diner. The one who always chose the window booth. The one who watched the parking lot. He tapped lightly on my driver's window, 3 polite little knocks that made me jump. I cracked the window an inch, rain immediately spraying inside. "You okay?" he asked, voice calm, almost casual. "Car trouble?" My throat felt dry. Yeah, I managed. It just died. Everything shut off. He leaned slightly, peering over the hood into the darkness. Old pine'll do that to you, he said. Bad place to break down. You're Emily, right? The way he said my name sent a chill down my spine. Too familiar. Too certain. You come into the diner, I said slowly. I've seen you there. He smiled, like I'd just answered a quiz correctly. Yeah. Small town. You get to know people by habit. Same faces, same cars, same schedules. The way he lingered on that last word made my skin prickle. Pop the hood again, he suggested. I'll take a look. I'm decent with engines. Can't leave you sitting here in the dark. Every instinct screamed no. But I also knew how things looked. I was alone, stuck, and he was helping. If I pushed him away too hard, I might agitate him. Sure, I said softly. Thank you. I popped the hood. He moved around to the front of the car, the rain soaking his jacket, but he didn't seem bothered. In the side mirror, I watched him lean in over the engine, his hands moving with an ease that told me this wasn't his first time working under a hood in the dark. He barely looked at the engine before he made his pronouncement. Yeah, this isn't going anywhere tonight, he said. Something in the wiring's gone. You're not starting it out here. My heart hammered faster. How can you tell that quickly? I asked. He shrugged. Experience, he said. And I heard it when I pulled up. Sounded dead as soon as I got close. But I knew for a fact he hadn't heard it die. The road had been empty before his lights appeared. You got anyone you can call? He asked, straightening and walking back toward my window. Tow truck, boyfriend, anything like that? I tightened my grip on my phone, letting the lie form smoothly. My boyfriend knows my route, I said. If I don't text him in 15 minutes, he'll call the police. For a split second, something in his expression tightened. Then he smoothed it away, replacing it with a polite half-smile. Good, he said softly. That's smart. He nodded toward the road behind us. Look, there's no signal here. I've driven this stretch enough to know that. I can take you into town. You can call whoever you need from there. You've driven this stretch enough? I echoed. Sure, he said. I see you on it all the time. White car, same time most nights. Hard not to notice. He said it like it was a compliment, like I should be flattered to be part of his mental map. Instead, it made my stomach drop. You don't have to be scared of me, he added. If I wanted to do something, I wouldn't have called the sheriff first. The words were strange enough that I almost missed their meaning. The sheriff? I repeated. Yeah, he said. Called them before I came down this way. Told them I had a bad feeling you might be out here in this storm. It took my brain a couple of seconds to catch up with that sentence. You called them. Before you saw me? I asked. Road like this, he said, shrugging again. I see your car leave the diner every night, and I knew the weather was turning. I worried you'd get stuck out here. I figured it wouldn't hurt to let them know someone might need help. On the surface, the explanation sounded almost thoughtful. Beneath it, there was something cold and premeditated. He hadn't reacted with surprise when he found me stranded. He'd arrived like someone whose plan was proceeding on schedule. I'd really rather wait for a tow, I said. If the sheriff knows I'm out here, they'll send someone. He leaned a little closer to the window, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. Emily, he said softly, I'm the someone who showed up. What are the odds, right? The smile that followed didn't reach his eyes. "Come on," he continued. "It's getting cold. Grab your bag. My truck's warm. I'll take you anywhere you want. We can even swing by the station if that makes you feel better." My mind raced. If he had truly called the sheriff, there'd be a record. If he hadn't, he was trying to scare me into compliance by pretending this was all monitored. "I just need a minute to think," I said. "Can I try the car one more time?" He sighed, stepping back with exaggerated patience. "Sure," he said. "I'll wait in the truck. 10 minutes. If you're ready to be reasonable, flash your headlights. If not..." He let the sentence trail off, then turned and walked back toward his truck. As soon as his door closed, I let my face drop into my hands and finally admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't stranded with a stranger. I was trapped with someone who had planned for me to be here. I watched his truck through my mirrors, the glow of his headlights turning the rain into silver threads. He didn't drive away. He just sat there, waiting. My fingers shook as I dug through my bag. Wallet. Keys. Phone. A small bottle of pepper spray I'd bought years ago and never used. I wrapped my hand around it, feeling slightly less helpless. "Okay," I told myself. "Think. If he wants you to come to him, don't. If he wants you to panic, don't." Leaving the car meant exposure, but staying inside felt like sitting in a glass box with a timer ticking down. I needed a third option. An idea formed, reckless, not particularly good, but better than doing nothing. If I pretended to accept his help, got him back under the hood, got him focused on the engine, maybe I could slip out the passenger side and make a run for it. The odds weren't great. He was taller and probably faster. But running toward the road, toward the possibility of another car, felt less fatal than walking willingly into his truck. I took a breath, wiped my face with my sleeve, and rolled the window down a crack. Then I stuck my arm out and waved once, not quite the signal he'd requested, but close enough. His truck door opened almost immediately. He stepped out, that same measured pace, like a man who knew he still had the upper hand. "Changed your mind?" he called. "Maybe," I said. "Can you try the hood one more time first? If it's something simple, I'd rather drive my own car." He stared at me for a long moment, and I felt every second of it. Then he nodded slowly. "Sure," he said. "Pop it." The second he moved around to the front of the car, I slid across the seats, keeping low. The interior stayed dark, dead battery working in my favor now. No courtesy light to give me away. I unlocked the passenger door as quietly as I could. His muffled voice floated back over the sound of the rain. "Yeah, same as before," he muttered. "Definitely not going anywhere on its own." I cracked the door just enough to slip through. Cold air rushed in. The rain hit my face, my clothes, soaking me in seconds. I eased the door shut behind me, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. Then I ran. I ran forward along the shoulder, staying as close to the trees as I dared, my shoes slipping on the wet asphalt. "Emily." My name snapped through the night, sharp and angry now. I didn't look back. Didn't answer. Didn't slow down. Behind me, the hood slammed. His footsteps hit the road, heavier, faster now. "Stop," he shouted. "You're going to get yourself hurt." The insane part was, if someone had recorded just the audio, it might have sounded like he was worried for me. I kept running, lungs burning, rainwater mixing with tears on my face. The road curved ahead, and for a split second I saw nothing but darkness. Then, like some kind of miracle, a pair of headlights appeared around the next bend, beam cutting through the rain. I veered toward the middle of the lane, waving my arms like I'd lost my mind. If they didn't see me, they might hit me. But at least then someone would know something had happened here. The approaching car slowed, brake lights flaring red in the rain. I stumbled toward the driver's side, banging on the window with both hands. Please. Please, don't drive away. Inside, an older couple stared at me, a man behind the wheel, a woman in the passenger seat with wide, startled eyes. What on earth? The man began, rolling the window down a few inches. There's a man, I gasped, words tumbling over each other. My car died back there. He showed up out of nowhere. He knows my name, my route. Please, I need help, don't leave me. Behind me, I heard his footsteps slow. Hey, he called out, tone shifting back to something benign, almost offended. She's fine. Her car broke down. I was just trying to give her a ride. The older man leaned to look past me, squinting through the rain. You two know each other? He asked. I only know him from the diner, I said quickly. He sits there at night and watches the parking lot. He knew I'd be on this road. Please, I don't want to go with him. The woman's face hardened, her hand moving to the door lock. Get in, she said. Her voice was soft but firm. Back seat. Now. I yanked the rear door open and practically threw myself inside, slamming it shut and locking it. Outside, he stopped a few feet from the car, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. You're making a mistake, he told the couple. You don't know what story she's telling you. The older man rolled the window another inch up. Maybe, he said. But that's our mistake to make. For a moment, the man from the diner just stood there, eyes locked on mine through the glass. Then he gave the smallest nod, stepped back, and let us drive away. I didn't stop shaking until we pulled into the pale glow of the nearest gas station. The place was almost empty, just one other car at a pump and the clerk inside, bored and scrolling on his phone. I'm Tom, the older man said, killing the engine. This is my wife, Linda. You okay back there, Emily? I nodded automatically, even though nothing in my body felt okay. Linda turned in her seat to face me fully. Do you have your phone? She asked. I held it up. No service out there, I said. I tried. You've got some now, Tom said, gesturing toward the signal bars that had climbed back as we neared town. First thing we do is call the sheriff. He stepped out and headed toward the old payphone by the wall, apparently not trusting his own cell coverage. Linda stayed with me. You did the right thing, she said quietly. Running. Flagging us down. I know it didn't feel safe, but that road behind him definitely wasn't. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new voicemail notification flashed on screen, time-stamped about 10 or 15 minutes earlier. I frowned. I didn't even hear it ring, I murmured. Maybe no signal where you were, Linda said. Who's it from? The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was local. Should I asked. Play it, she said. I put the phone to my ear and hit the voicemail. Static crackled first, then a man's voice. Hey, Emily, this is Deputy Harris with the County Sheriff's Office. We got a call from a concerned citizen who said your car might be broken down on Old Pine Road tonight. We're just checking in to make sure you're safe. Call us back when you get this. The message ended. The timestamp was from before my engine had died. My skin went cold. Before my car died, I said out loud. He called before it actually happened. Linda's eyes widened. You're sure? I nodded, showing her the screen. This voicemail came in while I was still at the diner or just leaving. My car didn't cut out until I was deep in Old Pine. Tom returned to the car, rain dripping from his jacket. "Sheriff's sending a unit to check your car and file a report," he said. "They're sending a deputy here too, to talk to you." I replayed the voicemail on speaker. Tom's jaw clenched. "So he called them in advance," he said. "Like he was pre-writing an alibi in case anything went wrong." "Or in case you disappeared," Linda added quietly. My stomach twisted. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled into the lot, lights off but presence unmistakable. A deputy stepped out, early 30s, tired eyes, badge catching the fluorescent light. "Emily?" he asked. "That's me," I said, stepping out of the car. "I'm Harris," he introduced himself. We spoke on the voicemail, sort of. He listened as I told him everything: the diner, the booth, the watching, the breakdown, the cable tie, the offer of a ride, the chase, Tom and Linda's arrival. He didn't interrupt much, just asked specific questions, jotting notes on a small pad. When I finished, he nodded toward my phone. "That call came in before we got a report from the couple about picking you up," he said. "The concerned citizen who called about you gave your name, your car description, and the route you usually drive. Said he just had a bad feeling about you being out there alone tonight." "Did he give a name?" I asked. "Yeah," Harris said. Said his name was Mark. No last name. Number was blocked. I didn't know his real name. But hearing that fake one out loud felt like swallowing glass. They offered to take me to the station that night, but Tom and Linda insisted on driving me home first to grab some things and then to my sister's apartment. Harris followed behind, his cruiser a quiet escort through the wet streets. My sister, Claire, opened the door in pajama pants and a messy bun, her face creasing with confusion that flipped to horror as she listened. "You're staying here," she said immediately. No argument. "You are not going back to that apartment alone." I didn't argue. On the way out, I glanced down the stairwell through the front window. For a moment, I imagined a dark truck idling outside, lights off, waiting. There was nothing there. Just wet pavement and parked cars. The next morning at the station, Harris sat me down in a small interview room, turned on a recorder, and asked me to tell the story again, this time slowly, with as much detail as I could remember. "How many times did you see him at the diner?" "Dozens," I said. "Maybe more." I didn't count. He wasn't a one-time thing. "Ever see him talk to anyone else? Staff? Customers?" "Not really," I said. "He seemed detached. He watched more than he spoke." Harris slid a folder across the table. Inside were blurry stills from the diner's parking lot cameras. In one, my car sat under the lamppost. In the corner, half in shadow, was the outline of a truck and what looked like a man leaning on the hood. "Is that him?" Harris asked. I squinted at the grainy image. I couldn't make out his face, but something about the posture, relaxed, waiting, like he had nowhere else to be, felt right. "I think so," I said quietly. Harris nodded. "We've seen the truck in footages from a few different places around town," he said. "Never close enough to get a clean plate. Always just lingering." Over the next week, the sheriff's office dug deeper. They got a clearer shot of the truck's plate from another camera across the street. The number traced back to a registered vehicle, but the listed address was a storage facility full of rented units. No actual home. No work address. Just a paper trail bent into a loop. "He's careful," Harris said. "Careful people are the hardest to catch. But they slip eventually." Meanwhile, my life shrunk down to routes that felt safe. I slept at Claire's, shared her tiny second bedroom, and jumped every time a car with a similar engine sound drove past her building. At work, my manager added new rules. No one leaves alone, we walk each other to our cars, we keep the door locked once it's dark. The corner booth stayed empty. For the first couple of nights, every time the bell over the door rang, my heart stopped, expecting to see him walk in. He never did. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Predators don't just evaporate. They relocate. They change tactics. One evening, Harris stopped by the diner again. He slid into a booth, ordered coffee, and waited until the rush thinned before waving me over. "We've been comparing notes with other counties," he said. "Turns out you're not the first woman to report something like this." He laid out reports from 2 other towns, both a couple of hours away. In each one, a woman had broken down on a rural road with no signal, no witnesses. In each one, a man in a dark truck had shown up almost immediately, offering help that didn't feel like help. In both of those cases, the women had felt uncomfortable, made an excuse, and gotten away before anything overt happened. "We never had enough to connect them," Harris said. "Until now." I stared at the reports, my stomach knotting tighter. I hadn't been singled out because of who I was. I'd been selected because I fit a pattern he'd already been practicing on. One of the strangest parts of surviving something is how ordinary everything else looks afterwards. The same streets, the same grocery aisles, the same coworkers' jokes. But underneath, your perception is rewired. I found myself noticing details I'd never cared about before, where security cameras were pointed, which corners of parking lots were unlit, which cars I saw more than once on the same drive. Sometimes I'd spot a dark truck 2 cars back at a light and feel my chest seize up. Most of the time, it would turn off in another direction. Once or twice, it turned where I turned. I'd change my route deliberately then, taking a different exit, looping back through side streets until I was sure I wasn't being followed. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I wasn't. That's the problem, you rarely get confirmation. About a week after my statement, I went out to my own car in Claire's building lot and noticed something that stopped me cold. On the back of the driver's side mirror, half hidden from my angle, was a smudge of black grease. Not random road grime, a distinct thumb-shaped streak right where someone's hand would land if they'd leaned in close. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't driven much. I hadn't taken the car through anything messy. I hadn't touched it there. I wiped it off with a tissue, my hands trembling. No note. No broken window. Just that quiet little mark, like a calling card. If it was him, he wanted me to know he could still get close. If it wasn't, my brain had reached the point where any anomaly felt like a threat. Either way, the message in my body was the same: stay alert. A few days later, Harris called me back to the station. "We think we've got something," he said. He walked me through a board covered in printouts and notes, lines connecting locations and dates. "We matched partial prints from under your hood to partials found on a car and one of those other breakdown reports," he explained. "Not clean enough for court yet, but strong enough to treat this as the same offender." They still didn't have a real name, but they had more than they'd had before. "We've increased patrols on Old Pine," he added. "We've flagged his truck in the system. If it hits certain cameras again, we'll know faster." "Is that enough?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "It's something," he said. "Look, Emily. Monsters in horror movies jump out of closets. Real ones tend to hide in routines. They like predictability, especially yours, because it makes planning easy." He looked me in the eye. "What you did that night running, flagging that car, that broke his script," he said. "He wanted a neat story where he was the last person you ever saw. Instead, you turned him into a suspect with a paper trail. Do you think he'll come back?" I asked. Harris paused. I think men like him don't like losing control, he said. So yeah, he might try to circle back. But now he knows you're not easy prey, and he knows we're watching. It wasn't a promise of safety. It was a promise of pressure. Sometimes, that's the best the system can offer. I did drive Old Pine Road again eventually. People are always surprised when I say that. They think I'd avoid it forever. But that road is part of my town, part of my life. If I let him own it in my mind, then he'd still be winning, even from a distance. The first time back, my hands were slick on the wheel. I drove earlier in the evening, sun still leaking through the trees. The curves were the same. The ditches, the overhanging branches, the blind bends, all exactly where I remembered them. When I reached the stretch where my car had died, I slowed down. There was no mark on the pavement, no sign that anything unusual had ever happened there. If you weren't me, you'd see just asphalt and forest. I saw a version of myself in the dark, sitting behind a dead dashboard and realizing for the first time that the worst danger on that road wasn't weather or wildlife, it was a man who'd studied my habits and decided he was entitled to my fear. I rolled past the spot, not stopping, but not rushing either. I whispered a quiet, "Not yours," to the empty trees. Not his road. Not his story. Not anymore. I haven't seen him again. At least, not that I've recognized. No more dark truck at the edge of the lot. No more cap-shadowed face in the corner booth. Harris says sightings of that truck along Old Pine have dropped to zero. Either he left town, or he's hiding better. Both options are unsettling in their own way. Sometimes, I catch a stranger's eye at the grocery store and feel a flash of panic that fades into embarrassment when they just smile and walk on. Trauma does that, it rewires you to see threats in every shadow. But I'd rather overreact and be wrong than ignore something real again. I started talking about that night more openly, to coworkers, to friends, even to customers I trusted. At first it felt awkward, too dramatic, like I was making a big deal out of something that almost happened. Then other stories came out. My cousin had a guy follow her home a few nights in a row. I kept seeing the same car in the mall parking lot after my evening shifts. There's always this one man at my bus stop who stands too close but never speaks. None of them had proof of a crime. But all of them had that same tightness in their voice, the same phrase. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. That word again, paranoid. The one we use to shut ourselves up before anyone else has to. If you're waiting for a neat ending, I don't really have one. He wasn't arrested with overwhelming evidence. There was no dramatic courtroom scene, no headline that wrapped everything up in a satisfying sentence. Real life is rarely that tidy. What I do have is a set of choices I make differently now. I let people walk me to my car. I change my route sometimes, even if it costs me 10 extra minutes. I pay attention to who notices me, not in a vain way, but in a survival one. I don't talk myself out of unease just because I'm afraid of being rude or overreacting. Most importantly, I believe myself. I believe that the moment my stomach drops and my skin prickles and a voice in my head says, something is wrong, that feeling is worth listening to. The man on Old Pine Road relied on that conditioning, the social training that tells women to be nice, to be grateful, to give the benefit of the doubt. He wanted me to feel silly for being afraid, ashamed for running, embarrassed for making a scene in front of that older couple. I'm not. If anything, I wish I'd listened to my instincts sooner, back when he was just a weird regular in a corner booth who stared at my car more than his food. So why am I telling you all this? Because on paper, my story is a near miss. Nothing officially happened. No injuries, no body, no clear-cut crime. For a long time, that made me feel like I didn't have the right to call it survival. But I do. survival isn't only escaping from what did happen. Sometimes it's escaping from what almost did. It's choosing to run when the polite thing to do would be to stay. It's waving down a stranger's car in the middle of a dark road because your gut is screaming louder than your fear of looking crazy. It's sitting in a police station, telling your story again and again so there's a record in case someone else meets the same man and doesn't get away as easily. If you ever find yourself alone on a road like that, engine dead, phone useless, a stranger offering help that feels too rehearsed, I hope my voice is somewhere in the back of your mind. Not telling you exactly what to do, not pretending there's a simple rule, just reminding you of this: you are allowed to trust your fear. You are allowed to make a scene, to say no, to run, to slam a door in someone's face if something about them feels wrong. The man who stopped behind me that night wanted to be the last chapter of my story. Instead, he's just a dangerous footnote in a life I'm still living, one I refuse to let him write for me.